Welcome back to the Bowl Call Fantasy Football Podcast. We're looking at rookies from a dynasty perspective. We've got wide receiver rankings, running back rankings, and some fun bets ahead of the 2022 NFL Draft. I've got my man himself, the Encyclopedia Footballica, a man with more knowledge of football statistics than most people have of all topics combined in their lifetime. Alan Seslowsky. With me today, the dream team back together again. What's up, my man? We're taking a look at fantasy dynasty rookies today, Alan.
Well, the draft is about a week away, so it's time to, educate the people and get everything. Just talk about the top storylines and how we could leverage that in our dynasty leagues. So I think that it's the perfect time to do it because we've seen players' values go up, go down, restabilize. There's a lot of smokescreen talk to get through. So let's make sense of it for everybody.
I love it. And as you know, these kind of breakdowns, they really prepare you not just for your fantasy. Listen, Dynasty Fantasy Football is the king of formats. Let's start there. It's the best of all formats. And the best, you've got to go into your Dynasty draft, the NFL draft, really understanding these players, understanding the values that are going to exist in the first round this season for your draft picks and all of that. So it's a really, really important discussion. And I think one of the biggest things is just understanding who are some of these players to be targeting, where we're hoping some of them go, and are we going to adjust our opinions of them, assuming that they go to the wrong spot. So let's start with the running back position, says, and break it down for me at the top. I know there's some high-level running backs. Breece Hall clearly being discussed as the top overall pick. Where do we go from there?
Yeah, I think the best way to start the conversation is saying that I think NFL teams are wising up that it's not optimal to take a running back in the first round of the real NFL draft. Now, we saw it last year with Najee Harris and Travis Etienne. Now, no surprise that Urban Meyer and the Donkey Jaguars took a pass-catching running back, so it's more defensible. But I think we could all agree, as much as we like Najee Harris, that it just doesn't make sense, especially when the quarterback was kind of toast, Ben Roethlisberger last year. I mean, it's excusable from a process perspective if it's the final piece of icing on top of the cake, right? Like what the Chiefs theoretically did with Clyde Edwards-Helaire wasn't the right move, but if they had taken Jonathan Taylor or DeAndre Swift, we might be having a different conversation. So if you're going to take a running back in the first round in 2022 and beyond, you want it to be the absolute last piece that you think is going to get you to that next level, Super Bowl. So this year, the DraftKings odds tell us that there's not going to be, or that there's likely not to be, a running back in the first round. The only team that could do it, and I highly doubt they would do it, I think would be the Buffalo Bills at 25. And the reason is because they told us that, sure, we like Devin Singletary. He had a nice stretch run, but we need something else. They tried to sign J.D. McKissick. He walked away from the deal. So we know that they want to add someone. Does that mean they're going to add a running back in the first round? Not necessarily. There's plenty of depth in this class. So I think that's the next layer of what you asked me. There's Breece Hall out of Iowa State. He's the cream of the crop in this class, but the sweet spot for him is probably around pick 50, maybe pick 35 to 50. And then, there's another couple running backs that could go in round 2, but I think in round 3, round 4, round 5, we're going to see, 7 or 8 guys go, and they all have different specific skill sets.
Yeah, I have heard, I did see a blurb recently about the Bills that they're not averse to taking a running back in the first round, but what are the lines on the, I'm sure it's 0.5 RBs in the first round. Are you seeing a
minus 190 to take for the under over? So basically, if you think there's going to be a running back in the first round, it's plus 145.
Yeah, and I think you and I both like the minus 190 there. The sports book I'm looking at, it doesn't even have that prop. So it's so convinced that no running backs will go in the first. It didn't even bother to throw up a running back prop for the first round. But more importantly to me, Breece Hall, he catches passes. Give me a little prospect breakdown of him. And is he the number 1 overall pick in your dynasty league this season, regardless of where he goes?
So let's start with your first question. Breece Hall, when you break him down, he's a 3-down skill set, checks all the boxes, has the massive production, tested through the roof at the combine. I mean, his best comparables. I mean, if you look at just like his profile alone, Jonathan Taylor has similar metrics. Saquon Barkley had similar metrics. I mean, he compares with the best of the best. It's not unreasonable in a startup draft, sight unseen, to take him in the top 5 or 6 running backs off the board, especially given that he's only 20 years old. He's not even 21 yet.
He's young.
I mean, there is some risk there. I mean, it'd be similar to talking about like Javonte Williams, right? We all like Javonte Williams as a top 2 or 3 running back. You've been on the forefront of that. But landing spot is going to matter. What happens if the Washington Commanders have Breece Hall and then it's him and Antonio Gibson, right? Then we're not as excited. So
who are the destructors of Breece Hall? Like, if you're picking 1-1 and you're watching the draft and you're like, I want Breece Hall landing somewhere that's going to be great for me, right? Give me some of the spots where you're like, oh no, I'm screwed, and give me some of the spots where you're like, that's what I was hoping for.
Yeah, I think that the spot I'm screwed would. So, okay, let's assume for a minute the sweet spot for the first running back. Running back 1 is pick 33, the beginning of the second round, to say pick 50, right? Which is the middle of the second round. All right. So if we go down, let's start with the good. Can we start with the good?
Sure.
Okay. The good would be Houston at pick 37. They don't have an alpha runner. Right now they have Rex Burkhead, Marlon Mack, and I think
a bunch of garbage over there.
Yeah, bunch of garbage. So even though the team, I know you love running backs on good teams, but we think that they're ascending. I mean, and the opportunity would be there. Go ahead.
Can't be descending if you're Houston. Like, it doesn't get much worse. So they have to be. I don't love but you're going to get a player on a bad team. It's the top of the round. There's no good teams here.
But also, just right from an opportunity perspective, like, he can walk in day 1 and be a 20-touch runner that catches passes. And, listen, it's still an NFL team that if they're going to be behind, it's not like he's a 2-down grinder. He will be involved in the passing game. So I think Houston, even though it's a bad team, at pick 37, that's a good landing spot. All right. Moving down a little bit, the Jets have pick 38. Michael Carter's there. I'm mixed on this one. I think it's better for real football. I wouldn't be overly excited about it, but so I think that would be a not so great spot.
That's a bad one. That's a ruinous pick.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. The next one is Seattle. They have 2 picks in a row, pick 40 and 41. I think it's about the 9th and 10th pick, or 10th and 11th pick in the second round.
Let me throw this at you. I think Breece Hall doesn't get past Seattle if he makes it to Seattle. That's his firewall, right? That's the firewall. To me, there's no way Seattle has 2 picks low and that they like. To me, that's the firewall. He should not make it past them because they desperately need a running back.
Yeah, here's the other thing, though, is that they need so many pieces now that Russell Wilson's gone. They need to rebuild that team offensively and defensively. They may say to themselves, hey, we can get a running back in the later round. We could re-sign Rashad Penny. Or if one of the quarterbacks that they like slips to like pick 30, pick 31, they may use those 2 picks to get up into that first round in order to get that 5th-year option. So it's not a lock that they're going to pick there either.
Yeah. It'd be interesting, but I still think without that aside, that's the spot. They need a running back bad, and I think that would be a great landing spot forever. I could also see Seattle flipping the script because this is what they do, and Breece Hall's there, but they kind of go with Kenneth Walker or some other guy that they think, pull a Chiefs Clyde Edwards-Helaire move on us and just kind of surprise you with one of Pete Carroll's guys. You know how he'll just do that.
Yeah, and I think one of the better spots is pick 43. Now, this is a real running back spot, even if it's not RB1. If it's not Breece Hall, pick 43 Atlanta, that seems like a good spot. That could be RB2. That could be Kenneth Walker if he's the second runner off the board out of Michigan State. So those are the spots where usually the first 2 running backs will go. I've seen some credible mocks that they only have 2 running backs in the second round, possibly a third, and then the next running back not coming off the board until like pick 96 when the Saints, in the 90s. That's into the third, 98. That's when the Saints pick in the third round. That's and again, but starting in round 3, round 4, you're just going to see 10 of these guys go off the board. I mean, there's pass catching running backs like James Cook, who, is Dalvin Cook's brother. You have Zamir White, who NFL teams like, who's more of a 2-down grinder. both of those running backs coming out of Georgia. So the second round of your rookie dynasty drafts could be loaded with these unclear situations on depth charts, which is always good for fantasy.
You and I have talked about this many, many times. The way you want to navigate your dynasty rookie draft is very much with, you want to take your solid prospects, your highly drafted, high draft capital players in round 1, and then load up on these running backs that just go to random spots in round 2 and 3. Those guys just emerge. It might take a season or two, and sometimes it takes an injury, and all of a sudden Khalil Herbert is out there, right. Or Dearness Johnson's going crazy. So you want these guys just on your bench and on your taxi squad in your dynasty league. That's how you accidentally find starting running backs in the draft. That's your best approach.
Yeah, and the best case scenario with something like that is you land on Elijah Mitchell. You take Elijah Mitchell in the third round of your rookie draft, and all of a sudden you have a full year starter. The downside of it is you land on, say, Jarrett Patterson, where there was a couple opportunities for him to get in there. It never really panned out in the first couple of years here, but and there's everything in between. Like you mentioned Khalil Herbert. That's a great example because that's a player that you were on a roll, you were winning, and then all of a sudden maybe you got an injured running back on your team and he plugged a hole for you for 2 or 3 weeks. I mean, that's exactly what you want out of these third round running backs.
And ready to step up for longer. So let's kind of go through the rest of this running back class and give us a couple of, we can talk about some of the highly touted prospects, and then we can get into a couple of sleepers we might find late. But Kenneth Walker, you mentioned him, K-Dubs, Dynamite Walker.
JJ Walker, right? Is that the now Kenneth Walker, he's out of Michigan State. I mean, he just had tons of rushing production. The knock on him is similar to what we heard about Jonathan Taylor, that he just doesn't catch the ball. And we don't know that he doesn't catch the ball. We know that he didn't catch the ball at Michigan State. They, maybe it was because they didn't have to throw to him. That's people don't because he did fine in the passing drills at the pro day. At all the testing in the combine. So it's Kenneth Walker. He's just one of those let me give you his measurables. He's 5'9". He's 211 pounds, perfect size, right? 40-yard dash was 98th percentile. It was 4.38. I mean, this guy blazed. If you look at any of the tape, he flies, right? Big yards per carry, 5.5. Every time that he touches the ball, there's a possibility he's taking it to the house. Player Profiler has him comped to LaDainian Tomlinson from a running perspective. He's going to be
that's quite the comparison.
Right. Exactly. Just talking about workout metrics wise. Now, he's likely never to be like a top 5 or 8 running back, but he's probably going to be like the RB11 to RB14 like almost every year. Just think of it like Nick Chubb.
Nick Chubb is the person that comes to mind because he doesn't catch passes. But I wonder, like you said, we don't know that he can't catch passes. We just don't. He didn't.
Right. What if he goes to a team where, we know certain quarterbacks dump off? We know certain running quarterbacks usually do not. So maybe that's what hurt Miles Sanders, is that he's been playing with quarterbacks that don't dump the ball off, for example. But let's say Kenneth Walker
Stop
goes
trying to make Miles
forget
Sanders.
it. It's over, right? It's over.
It's enough.
But so if Kenneth Walker goes to, let's say he ends up being, Buffalo's a bad example because we know Josh Allen tucks it.
That's a Seattle guy too. I could see him going to Seattle. I'm going to keep mentioning Seattle because it's such a good spot for a guy. But a guy like this, like Seattle doesn't care. They'll have 2 running backs. The thing is, there'll be 2 guys, right? Most teams that you're going to go to, they're going to have their 2-down grinder and they're going to have their 3rd-down back. But the question is, can the 2-down grinder catch a pass every once in a while? And I think a big part of this that we don't talk about, and I think it's very underrated, and there's no way of knowing going into the draft really, or that I could tell, is can he pass block? Because I think that is much more of a determinative factor if a guy's truly a 3-down back. Can he pass protect? Can he do it? And I've never seen. I don't know that you can know that before they make it to the team.
Funny enough, you mentioned that, is that the knock on Breece Hall is that he makes a business decision when it comes to
that's a
pass
problem.
blocking.
Yeah, that's a problem.
And that it's not that he just doesn't do it. He just wasn't willing based on some of the film grinders' observations, to stick his nose in there. Kenneth Walker was a little different. He was in there pass blocking. Again, he's more of a bruiser type. Certainly a less of a finesse guy, speed player. Again, talking about like Jonathan Taylor. So Breece Hall, we haven't seen it yet, but his skill set is so dynamic. I think that whoever takes him, if he's the RB1, I mean, he's one of the better prospects that's come out in the last half decade, that won't matter too much. But yes, generally, when you start talking about getting on the field, protecting the quarterback, let's say New England's not going to draft one because they have two running backs at this point. But yeah, you want someone that's going to stick their nose in there so they can get on the field.
Look at Joe Mixon. Cannot stay on the field for 3 downs. Inconsistent fantasy performer because he doesn't really pass protect well. Those things are really, really critical. And it's, I think, the most underrated part of analyzing these guys, not just pre-draft, but generally for fantasy football punditry in general. Let's talk about Isaiah Spiller. I want to kind of go down the list. Isaiah Spiller, kind of consensus. At some point, Isaiah Spiller was being discussed as like maybe one of the top guys. Kind of dropped down, consensus 3 or 4, third or fourth best guy. What does he do, and what can we expect from him as far as a dynasty prospect?
Yeah, Isaiah Spiller was the RB1 or the RB2 on a lot of boards before the combine, and no player from a skill set from the skills position hurt himself more than Isaiah Spiller. Just poor testing, unwillingness to test. I mean, it's the NFL is probably going to like Spiller more than fantasy players do. Isaiah Spiller is probably, I mean, he's massive. He's 6 foot. He's 217 pounds. His 40-yard dash, though, was a 4.69. And again, if that's, I don't put as much weight on the 40-yard dash as everybody else does. Maybe that's a leak in my game, but he did have massive production. His best comparison on Player Profiler is TJ Yeldon. So, are you still there? Can you hear me?
Yeah,
yep.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. I'm just gonna. Yeldon doesn't, nice career.
I guess
doesn't inspire.
He could go in the third round. So draft capital is going to play a big role on how I perceive him. So let's say he ends up. You know what? Actually, if he ends up like in the 4th or 5th round, but he has an opportunity, sure, no problem. But the athletic testing could drive him all the way to like the 5th or 6th round. So we'll see. In my rankings, he's going to be totally landing spot dependent. I would still probably put him at the RB 4 or 5. I wouldn't have him as high as 3, but I understand why people would still have him at 3 or 4.
Yeah, he's kind of floating. Listen, it's we're slow to adjust, but I think a lot of our post-draft analysis is going to come down to where they went, opportunity, what round they went in. How much weight do you personally put into draft capital when you're making your player and your ranking decisions? Elite dynasty rankings from Seslowsky every year, rookie dynasty rankings, man, got me on Amon-Ra St. Brown. Let me tell you something. When I say Encyclopedia Football, I'm not kidding around. I'm not kidding around. This is why I win all my leagues. It's because I look at your dynasty rankings every year and I'm like, oh, who's this Amon-Ra? Okay, right. That's higher than other people have him. All right, let me check him out. Let me check out Elijah Mitchell, who I got from Cody last year over from Player Profile, who wound up on a lot of my teams. So give me a little bit of your philosophy on this stuff.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned Amon-Ra when you talk about draft capital, because he was a player that everyone expected to go in the 2nd round and dropped to the 4th round. So that's a decision that you have to kind of square with yourself. You say, okay, we love the talent. We liked everything about his profile, but the NFL didn't like him as much as, fantasy analysts did. So he dropped to like the middle and sometimes the end of the 2nd round in your rookie dynasty drafts. And, we saw him pay off big, especially towards the end of the year. We could argue if, it was because DeAndre Swift and TJ Hawkinson weren't there. There was no other receivers. But at the end of the day, NFL production does reign supreme. So draft capital, I think, and not just draft capital, I think this is a point that a lot of players, dynasty players, miss. It's not just the draft capital. Oh, round 3 or round 4. It's the order in which these guys were drafted matters, right? So, for example, if someone's draft capital is round, let's say the first running back goes off the board and hypothetically in round 3 this year, right, in the real NFL draft, but that's the first running back taken, then the round 3 draft capital doesn't matter that much. It's the order in which they're selected that matters. The NFL will tell you what they think of these players, and a lot of the metrics and speed scores and all that kind of stuff are built into draft capital. That's why draft capital is so powerful. Not just because, oh, he's a second round guy or he's a third round guy. It's because all of the ingredients of the cake are baked into draft capital. And ultimately, it's what the NFL thinks of these players that's really going to drive their opportunity. And as you say all the time, opportunity is what drives fantasy points.
Yeah, and then talent is not something we're going to judge that much better than the NFL. That's kind of how I look at it as well. It's not like I know better than scouts who have been studying these guys. So outside of some things that we can avoid as dynasty enthusiasts, for example, guys who have stone hands or who can't pass protect or are too physically small for the position or other things like that, where well, they took him, he's the number 1 guy, but they took him as this third down scat back guy because they want that role. You have to be leery of those spots. But let's continue with this running back discussion and give me some sleepers, some guys that aren't quite at the top of the radar, but I might see in the 3rd round of my rookie draft. They're hanging out. They're there. They're a name that I heard Seslowsky mention on the Bold Call Fantasy Football podcast, where I'm like, you know what? I'll grab Elijah Mitchell here in the 3rd round instead of some turtly wide receiver. And then we'll get into the wide receiver core.
Yeah, sure. So my favorite guy right now, if you want to talk like sleepers or players that'll be available in that like 2-3 turn, is Tyler Algiere out of BYU. Tyler Algiere, he is built like a running back. I'm pulling up his actual measurables right now, but I believe he's like 5. Let's do it the right way. Let me actually pull up his measurables so you could let's see. I think he's like 220 pounds. Here it goes. It's coming up right now. He is 5'11", 220 pounds, man. Age 22. He is built like an ox. You know, he had all the production. And now listen, he played at BYU, same school that Zach Wilson was at last year, right? So, but for running backs, he'll probably be selected in the 3rd round. But you know, I saw him credibly mocked to New Orleans. What a nice Mark Ingram replacement that would be to complement
New Orleans
Alvin Kamara.
That's an interesting landing spot for a running back, because
for a running back that has early down
Yeah.
chops. So someone like Algiere, who's like, you know, RB10 or RB11, is somebody who I like a lot when I watched some of his highlights and film. Again, I'm still learning how to film grind like some of the experts, and I'm starting to learn some of the techniques. It's cool. Once you learn what to look for, it really does sharpen your game. Of Arizona State. Rachaad White is best comparable. He's a big guy who can catch passes. Right, Rachaad White. Peak David Johnson is what I hear him comp to a lot. The problem is that he's a little bit older for running back. I think he's age 23, similar to how like Najee Harris came out. That never bothers me as much anyway, because you're gonna, you figure you're gonna get one contract of these guys. Fine. So when I can't hear you. You're on mute.
Yeah.
There you go. You're back, right? You can.
And Rachaad White looking like one of the top 4 or 5 guys potentially to be drafted this year.
I don't think the NFL likes him as much as fantasy players do. I think that he could end up being like the 9th or 10th running back drafted.
Wow. Okay.
And then, we did our RotoWire mock draft. Jim Coventry took Rachaad White at pick 7 in the Superflex draft. He took him like early in the 1st round. I told you, fantasy guys, and rightfully so.
This was a rookie draft.
Rookie draft, yeah.
Okay, but Jim likes to plant a flag. Like, I gotta respect that.
No, I didn't mean a startup draft. Yeah, I just meant like 7th and like pick 1.7 in a mock rookie draft. He took him in the mid 1st round, even in a super flex over some of the quarterbacks. Fantasy guys love Rachaad White because he's big and he catches passes, and he's by all accounts, I mean, he's one of these players that like went to a JUCO school first, paid his own education, came up the hard way. Coaches are gonna love him, but he's probably one of these guys that's going to go in like round 6. And to say he gets drafted by, again, I use the Washington Commanders. Let's say he's round 6 or let's say he goes in round 5 to Buffalo. Right. So that's a spot we like.
Oh, I think that's great.
Right. That's what I'm saying. That would be an example of a good spot. But that round 5, round 6 draft capital is a little bit scary.
Well, so in Dynasty, you got to be careful wasting your 1st round picks on anyone who doesn't bring. You need to hit with your 1st rounder. Dynasty,
you only get one of them every year. You only get one pick.
Yeah, Dynasty is that way. You're allowed to miss on 1 out of 3 1st rounders and still have a good team. But if you're missing on 2 out of 3, your team is not good. Just how it goes. You need to refresh that team. It's just the math of how Dynasty works. So that's really exciting.
So
I'm going to write that name down. Rachaad White.
Yep, Rachaad White. Yeah, he's going to be popular. He's going to be like, people are going to be elbowing each other out of the room. Like you could see Rachaad White go ahead of Spiller in a lot of rookie drafts.
Yeah, that'll be one of those decisions, and I think a lot of it will have to do with landing spots. I think a lot of these running backs will have to do with landing spots. So it's good to get a sense of the talent, but in the end of the day, where they go, who they're backing up, where their draft capital is going to be a huge part of it. So can
I just going to give you an underrated spot? I think that whoever the Titans take to back up Derrick Henry is a good landing spot, especially if it's a specific type of back. You don't, I mean, look, they showed that they were willing to draft a running back in the 3rd round a couple years ago with Darrington Evans. They literally just cut him. He's on the Bears now. So they are looking for a backup running back that can give Derrick Henry some in-game relief. They don't want to run Derrick Henry 35 times. They run him that way because they have to. If they can find someone that could take 8 to 9 touches off of Derrick Henry's plate, and I don't mean like they can just go for 3 yards. Someone that can actually add value to their touches. That's a running back that I'm going to be interested in.
Yeah, and of course, the protection against Derrick Henry's age, and the fact that maybe he can get hurt again, and there are all these great reasons why even a backup running back can be fantastic.
The one that I like specifically, and I'm not even sure he's going to get drafted before the 7th round, is out of Michigan, Hassan Haskins. I mean, this guy's a truck. He actually had the most bench presses at the combine. He didn't really do any other drills, but if you put on the one game, I believe it was against Ohio State, he took the game over. I mean, they just fed him. He's a massive, massive size running back, and it's almost like a poor man's version of Derrick Henry. If wherever Hassan Haskins goes, he's been somebody that I'm not sure why the Dynasty rankers have him at like RB14, RB15. I'd probably have him closer to like 9 or 10.
Yeah, he's down there. RB16.
I like him though. When I watched him again, I just anecdotal watching specifically of that one game, I was like, somebody's gonna find gold with him.
There we go. I love it. So let's move on, because the strength of this draft class, a lot of people are saying on offense, is wide receiver above running back. And there are a couple of interesting bets out there on some of the different sports books for how many wide receivers will go in the 1st round. I've seen it at over under 5.5. You've seen it at 7.5 over on.
No. 5.5 is the number where it's at. Okay. It actually just pumped it up to 6.5 now.
Oh, there we go. Okay, it's at 6.5. So what is that number looking like? Because I've got over 5.5 here on this book that I'm looking at minus 350.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. So over 6.5 is minus 105.
I like that. So 6.5 is the expectation number.
Well, 6 is the number.
That's your par. Right. Yeah, that's your par, 6-ish. So it's going to be over or under 6. So that's really interesting.
What's happened is there's been 2 wide receivers that were fringy 1st rounders that are now thought of as more or less 75% chance to make it into the 1st round. And those 2 wide receivers are George Pickens. George Pickens was produced as a true freshman. And what happened was then he had a pretty bad injury, and then there was the COVID year. So Pickens is now coming to life, being pushed back into the 1st round. And the other one is Jahan Dotson out of Penn State. Jahan Dotson is like a supercharged Tyler Lockett. And who doesn't need that on their team? Now, Jahan Dotson's like the wide receiver 7 in this class pre-draft, but if he lands with an elite quarterback like Aaron Rodgers or with Patrick Mahomes, this is not Mecole Hardman, man. This is a real player. This guy has Steve Smith in his game. 5'11", 190 pounds, supercharged, fast. He has dog in his game. He goes up and gets the football. He'll fight people. He's got huge lift in his feet. So, you could throw him the ball against these 6-foot cornerbacks. He'll fight for him. And then you could do end arounds with him. Jahan Dotson, it wouldn't surprise me if he's the most productive wide receiver 1 year from now based on his landing spot. I mean, if Garrett Wilson at Ohio State goes to the Jets at pick 4 or 10, and Jahan Dotson's with Patrick Mahomes, and now that Tyreek Hill's there.
You're going to pick Jahan, whoever winds up with Mahomes, by the way, and Dotson, doesn't matter who it is. That guy is going to be in demand and he's going to be a guy that is going to get a lot of, he's going to get a lot of volume because they have no one to throw to.
Right. But the answer is like, well, Dotson won't get pushed up the whole way. Like I could see Jahan Dotson right now in your rookie dynasty drafts goes like pick 2.2, 1.11. If he lands in like a 6 spot like that, like I can see him getting pushed up to like 1.5, 1.6. But, George Pickens, if he lands in the nut spot because he profiles more like a proper NFL wide receiver, could make it all the way up to like the 103.
Let's talk about some of these profiles, and let's start really at the top. So yeah, let's rapid react with some profiles of the potential first round wide receivers. And the consensus top guy right now is Garrett Wilson. Give me his background. What is his deal?
Okay, so Ohio State has 2 wide receivers that are probably in the top 5, right? There's Garrett Wilson and there's Chris Olave. And a big debate of the offseason is, who do you like? Do you like Garrett Wilson or do you like Chris Olave? Now, Olave was a true senior. Garrett Wilson, I believe, is an underclassman, early declare. I'll have to double check that.
I'll check the age.
I believe that is the case right there. And they're 2 different types of receivers. I personally have Olave a little higher, not because I don't think I think that Garrett Wilson has probably more upside, but Olave I don't think can fail. I think he's too big to fail. I think you're looking at a Jarvis Landry type of thing where you'll get
a T. Higgins situation.
T. Higgins totally is a more of a proper alpha. Chris Olave is more of a route runner. Now these guys are not big. I believe 189 and 183 respectively, both around 6 feet tall. So this seems to be the new prototype of wide receivers in the NFL. Now Olave, from what I've observed, can fit into any system. He doesn't have to be in a specific system. Olave, he could, run underneath. He can go deep. There's been the knock on him is that he doesn't have any yards after the catch. Once he gets hit, that's it. He's going down. Garrett Wilson, who's the consensus top, again, feels like he has some upside. Doesn't feel like the typical number 1 wide receiver. And it's going to be tough if he lands on a bad team. I mean, of course, that's for any receiver. So he is one of the 3 players who could go at the top of most drafts. I don't think he's, he might be the consensus 1, but it's not by much. At the top, also, you have Drake London out of USC, he's like the prototypical, Calvin Johnson, Dez Bryant type, where he's the big wide receiver, 6'4". About 218 pounds. Drake London actually spent his freshman year at USC playing basketball. So he's that typical box out type of guy. And the third guy who could go to the top is the type of wide receiver that you hate, Geek. Jameson Williams out of Alabama.
Not my guy.
The speedster. he tore his ACL in the college championship game back in December, but by all accounts, everything's going well. We don't worry about torn ACLs right now. There is talk that he could be the first wide receiver off the board to Atlanta early on. I believe they picked 5 or 6.
4.340.
For who?
For Jameson Winston. They have him at
Jameson Williams, yeah.
Yeah, Jameson Winston, what did I say? Jameson Williams. But so when you say speedster, there are speedsters like Tyreek Hill who can route run, and they're great across the board. They can take it, they can catch a pass and kind of yak it to the house, or they can go deep. What is Jameson Winston profile? Is this like a
he said Winston again?
I'm gonna keep doing it. Jameson, come on. Is Williams more
it's Jameis Winston and Jameson Williams?
Williams.
I get that stuck. I glitch on that too. By the way,
that's I'm gonna glitch on that many times for many years, unfortunately. But this is like more of a Hank Ruggs situation without the drunk driving stuff?
Ooh,
sorry, I went there, but that's the player that came to my mind. That guy, I was like, oh, Ruggs, he's so unproductive, just fast.
Yeah, and Jameson Williams is a stud, man. Age 21, 6'1", 180 pounds. I mean,
Devonta Smith.
No, Devonta Smith was lighter and not as big. I don't know. He was definitely the most. He'd probably be in the conversation for the unquestioned wide receiver 1 in this class if he hadn't been injured in in December. So it depends on what team he goes to, but I mean, I just can't imagine. NFL teams seem to love players like this, the speed guy that can route run. He's a good player, but I have to admittedly say I've become a little bit more cautious, let's say, with these type of wide receivers. Versus a little bit more of the sure thing types he's the upside play. I mean, he's the one that could break fantasy if you get, and he's falling to like pick 1.7, 1.8. He's probably moving up a little bit now to 1.5.
It's amazing that degenerates are drafting rookies ahead of the NFL. I know, because some of our leagues want to do that too. And I'm like, no. Give me the information.
Yeah, I mean, Kenneth Walker's undoubtedly the running back is going ahead of him in the early rookie mock drafts, and you could be sitting there 8 months from now just sick to your stomach because Jameson Williams is breaking fantasy. He's getting these games where it's like 6 for 120 and 2 touchdowns, and Kenneth Walker is having trouble, dominating touch share in his own backfield with like 8-9 touches. Maybe having more of a low end Josh Jacobs type of season 1,
Yeah, no, I hear it. And a big name that we haven't really discussed yet in the first round. And this was a guy that was looked at some points also as the WR1 of this class, has the size, has the way. I mean, I love this guy and I want to know why I shouldn't. Maybe the speed situation wasn't that great. Treylon Burks.
Yeah.
Okay. He was at one point. I mean, he's got this 6'2", 220. He's like he's Deebo Samuel here. Could be a running back or a wide receiver all in one spot. This style of guy is desirable now in the NFL.
Yeah, on paper, Treylon Burks, man, right? It's like 6'2", 224. He was the consensus 1-1. And then what happened was he tested poorly. His official 40 dash time, I believe, it was like 4.55. And again, I don't think anyone was mistaking him for a blazer. I mean, on film, he looks good, but the knock on him, let's say, is that he was getting a lot of slants, a lot of short passes. There wasn't a lot of things that people are finding reasons to push him down. And there's been some shine taken off Treylon Burks. I mean, he was originally mocked as a top 10 pick, and then he was in the teens, and now he's looking like the 20s. Some are saying that the Cowboys could take him a little bit later on in the draft. Let me see where the Cowboys pick exactly.
Underrated landing spot for a wide receiver. Not great, not my favorite. Underrated, though.
Yeah, I'm looking in round 1 right here. I just have to, let's say, Dallas picks at 24. Yeah, so that's the prime. That's a good spot for Treylon Burks. Now, I think he's a little bit more of a mystery because he produced well in college, didn't test well, but all it takes is a team and the right opportunity. If Jerry Jones is a notorious because he went to Arkansas. He's like, and if he likes his guy that went to Arkansas and they take him, I think that's a great landing spot.
Could there be a dumber reason to draft somebody than
he wanted to take Johnny Manziel? Remember they had to talk about.
I remember, like, don't let. His kids took over. His kids are, how you're like with your dad now. Like he's like he makes all stupid decisions, and you're like, Dad, listen. Let me handle this one, okay? All right.
All right. Taking the car keys away from Grandpa.
Let me handle this, okay? Let me have the discussion with the waitress about the table they sat us in. Don't start screaming. Take it easy. Crazy dad. Let's relax. That's what Jerry Jones's kids are like right now. Like that show. We're not bringing on crazy.
And do you remember, by the way, when they passed on Johnny Manziel? Do you remember who they took?
That year, was it Zeke?
No, because Manziel was like in the middle. It was like it was like in the teens or something like that. It was like pick 12 or 15 or something.
I can't remember what year it was now.
Yeah, so here we go.
Years ago?
It was. I'll put it this way: it's a locked in my judgment, first ballot Hall of Famer lineman, Zach Martin.
Oh, there it is. So
yeah, so you passed on Johnny Manziel, which would have been a disaster, and then you ended up with an all-timer Hall of Famer lineman, which built that. Remember when those like 3 years where
they had that
the Dallas line.
Yeah, which Dallas needs to get back to if they're going to be good. Again, and
so by the way, Treylon Burks, I'm in on, was the consensus.
I love Treylon Burks. By the way,
you're gonna get him in like 1.5, 1.6 right now. He could land in Green Bay too. Green Bay needs an alpha wide receiver. So any of those, with Treylon Burks has got the talent to be the first overall wide receiver, but he's got the benefit of where he's going to probably land on a better team. I mean, he could. He's got a lot of AJ Brown, Des Bryant to his game.
Player Profiler has his comparable at Jordy Nelson. And
isn't that a nice comp? That's a good comp.
Yeah. And would it be interesting for him to wind up with the Packers in the Jordy Nelson role?
Yeah, that's a good call right there.
Let's talk about a couple guys that might sneak their way back into the first round that are fringe guys. And then we'll talk about some potential bets here because I want to know your side of the over under 6.5 situation. That's a 50-50 bet right now. So that is a legit bet situation.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably a little bit of a sucker's bet, but I like the over because my bold call that I just I popped out a TikTok on. I'm going to do a video on is 8 wide receivers in the first round.
Yeah.
And so the previous record, Geek, is 7 wide receivers in the first round. That was in 2004. Larry Fitzgerald headlined that wide receiver class. This year, I think 5 are locked in. 1 or 2 are about 70% to get in. I would say 50-50 to get in. And then there's one that's probably like Christian Watson out of North Dakota State. It's probably like 35% chance to get in. He's more likely top of round 2 type of wide receiver, but it could happen. So I'm going to smash the over on that. It's 6.5, but like I said, a month ago when we were touting it, it was at 5.5.
When we cut this up, it's smash the over right there. I want a thing up there, but I'm going to tell you something. You had a brilliant reasoning in your breakdown for why a team might want to squeeze another wide receiver. And I'm not gonna steal your thunder. I want you to explain the brilliance. And we talked about this for obvious. Well, we talked about it for
quarterbacks
as well. So it's not completely new. But why would a team kind of like they're looking at a few different positions at the end of the first round? Why are they saying, you know what, let's grab the wide receiver, even if it's a little early here? And here's why. Explain it.
Yeah, I mean, wide receiver, the prices to maintain elite wide receivers and even wide receivers with, some upside is inflated in the NFL. We saw Christian Kirk get an $18 million a year deal. So with wide receiver prices on the rise, it is beneficial to draft a wide receiver in the first round because rookie contracts for first round players last for 5 years. If you take a wide receiver, any position player in the outer rounds 2 or later, it's a 4-year contract. Now we saw the elite players after 3 years want to renegotiate anyway, but look, someone like Deebo Samuel, who is says he wants to be traded, has no leverage. He's going to be playing on the San Francisco 49ers unless he decides not to play. But even then, the new CBA doesn't allow players to hold out without massive penalty. So with wide receiver inflation on the rise, this is going to drive teams, if they think there's a lead upside, to take more wide receivers in the first round. That could fuel the over on this number.
So that is the fuel for the over. The price of a mediocre Christian Kirk sends shockwaves.
Mike Williams, $20 million a year.
I mean, a mediocre Mike Williams. By the way, mediocre Mike Williams.
You're going to upset some people with that one.
I don't care. You know what? You've had 5 years to produce. 5 years, and not 5 years on. Not this ain't no Terry McLaurin situation. He's had 5 years with elite quarterback play to produce. I'm sorry, 5 years, guys. 5-year breakout. No, it's year 6. It's too late. It's too late. Why is Mike Williams WR20? Who is the brilliant genius? All right. Who thinks that Mike Williams ADPs are crazy?
Well, do you know where Mike Williams finished last year? Wide receiver what?
He had a decent year. I'm going to say 27.
Wide receiver 13.
Mike Williams?
Yeah, remember it was also fueled by. Do you remember the first 6 or 7 weeks he was wide receiver 1 or 2, and then
but he
was like 5 weeks where he went nuts. But it doesn't matter
because they played him in a certain role for a minute. Remember when that new offensive coordinator said, "Hey, he's going to be the Mike Thomas of our team," and when they did it, he produced really well. But what did they do 5 weeks into the season? They shifted him back for. I couldn't understand why.
Like, listen, here's his fantasy point game log through the first 3 weeks of the season. 22 fantasy points, 34 fantasy points. Okay, then he had a down week. Then he had a 40 fantasy point week. But from there, it was more of like single digit stuff. So he just came out of the gates hard, and that buoyed his fantasy value. I still like him because we love Justin Herbert. Keenan Allen is certainly in the very late peak of his career. There's some talk that the Chargers could draft one of these wide receivers, Chris Olave, who would, like I told you, could plug and play
at all.
Yeah,
although they really paid Mike Williams, but
that's more reason to get a rookie, so you have them on a rookie contract.
Maybe. The only way to me that Mike Williams has a smash season, and again, we're going off topic here, but
it's fine.
It's Keenan Allen gets hurt or something happens or they change his role again to what he did in the beginning of the season. Because I jumped on board. I had a lot of Mike Williams exposure, and he killed your fantasy teams for all that greatness that he did the first 5 weeks. He ruined your team the second half of the season for the most part. I mean, single digit numbers week after week for PPR wide receivers, just horrible. Those aren't like, those are horrible numbers. Like, you cannot have multiple weeks of 6s and 8s. So yeah, it was tough. So let's jump out of the first round of wide receiver real quick and give me some of your favorite sort of late sleepers, some guys that aren't going to be in the top 10, but you really like that have potential to break out, that I'm looking at in the third round or second or third round of my dynasty draft, going, oh yeah, this guy, he has a shot. Somebody who fell, injury, my little specials. Give me some names.
Okay, somebody that I liked, and he was going before the combine. He was going in the late first round of dynasty rookie drafts, and it just tested really poorly. Is David Bell out of Purdue? David Bell, 6'1", 210 pounds, just was really slow when he ran. I think he ran a 4.65, 15th percentile. I mean, that is just slow, but his college production, man, he just found a way to get it done. So this is where I think the dynasty market is missing. David Bell was a likely second round real NFL pick, and with his poor testing could fall to like the fourth round. If he makes it into the third round, you're going to see his value buoyed a little bit, but because of his below average athleticism, but he produced. See, I like guys like this. They're able to produce despite their level of athleticism. That means they're good at football. So right now in dynasty rookie drafts, Geek, he's going in like the late third round, mid third round, but you're passing on running backs for him. So I like him a bit more, especially if he can get on the field right away. So David Bell out of Purdue is my guy that everyone hates that I'm still in on right now.
Do you have examples of wide receivers that run a 4.65?
Anquan Boldin
success in the NFL besides Anquan Boldin, the classic slow wide receiver example that everybody wants to use.
Cooper Kupp wasn't fast. I forgot what
4.5s.
Let's see what Cooper Kupp ran real quick here. All right, if I pull up Kupp, his 40 time. Sorry about the slow. His 40 time was 4.62. Not that far off.
That's pretty bad.
Michael Crabtree was a slow wide receiver. Okay. He was a productive NFL wide receiver.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. He was a productive player. Solid fantasy asset.
Yeah, and that's what David Bell is. If David Bell can be Michael Crabtree, I'm happy with that, getting him in the third round. Michael Crabtree was a plug-and-play starter for your team for like 2.5, 3 years.
Totally fine. Dig deep. Give me one more wide receiver prospect, not quite at the top of the radar, that I should be paying attention to in my dynasty rookie draft.
Yeah,
and during the real NFL draft.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Beau Melton is a player that a lot of the dynasty players like. I'm not sure what the NFL is going to think of him. Beau Melton, I believe, I'm just double checking now. I believe he went to Rutgers. Let me double check that. Small school, obviously, small school program, but worked out really well. Beau Melton,
Rutgers.
Let's see. Yeah, it was Rutgers. Okay, 5'11", 189 pounds.
4.34 40.
Yeah, blazed at the combine, had a lot of dog in him. Some rock solid production despite poor quarterback play at Rutgers. If he gets fourth or fifth round draft capital, he's a guy that could play on special teams. So that means he'll make the roster. And it's one of those guys, if you're throwing late darts in the late third round, early fourth round, Melton is going to be better athletically than a lot of the guys that go in the second and third round. And like I said, let's say the Vikings draft him. Adam Thielen's old, often injured. We saw Amir Marset get on the field last year and actually be productive late in the year. He had a big game at the end. So let's put it this way: if you drafted Amir Marset in your rookie draft in the fourth round, you're not dropping him based on you saw a flash. Now, someone like Josh Palmer, who you took in the second round, you're debating whether you can even keep him.
I'm keeping Palmer. I think Palmer has got potential.
Right, he's got potential, but you probably don't feel good about him this year as you did last year, whereas Marset, you feel better about him than when you drafted him. So I think that's what Melton can provide, is that if he does get an opportunity, and he probably should, is somebody that you're going to want. If you're in the fourth round of your rookie draft, he might even slip to the fifth. Melton's a guy that I do like based on his athletic testing and, like I said, his ability to play special teams.
Really good metrics. All right, so before I let you go, any other bets? futures bets, draft bets that you're looking at right now ahead of next week's draft. We talked about the over 5.5, 6.5. 6.5 at wide receiver.
Risky, but yeah, I do like
love
it.
that. I don't think it's super risky. I think that is a really comfortable bet.
I mean, if you don't mind laying a lot of money, like a minus 700, I mean,
I do. That's a terrible.
Yeah, it's an insane bet. But under 0.5 tight ends, there's no tight ends going in the first round of this draft. That should be like minus 1100. Trey McBride is the only one that could possibly. I mean, he could sneak. You could see if Gronk doesn't come back, I could see the Tampa Bay grabbing him late. I mean, to develop another tight end. Trey McBride's a good pass catcher. He's been falling though.
You might not know this. I text with Gronk. Yeah, we've hung.
And he's coming back, right? He's coming.
Not Rob, Billy.
Oh,
but okay. Still, it doesn't matter. His bro. We're buds, and we DM. He's coming back.
Yeah, I hope so.
I'm trying to get him with Rob. I'm playing the long game.
By the way, a minus 700 is stupid advice. Never take that advice from me, because if you lose, it's just not worth it, So the one other bet I think is a pretty savvy bet is the no running backs in the first round. Again, you're paying a 190, but I think that's a good price at this point. You would think the betting market would have it at like a minus 225. So anything under 200, I don't mind laying a small 1-unit bet on that one.
I love that bet, because you're really just watching one team. You're watching the Bills, and if they don't pull the trigger on Hall, then you're scot-free. We knew that last season though with Harris, but the odds were 50-50 because you thought the Steelers were going to take him, and they did.
All right. Well, the last year, I think was the odds a half, or was it 1.5?
It was a half.
Okay.
It was just the one guy. Bet. It was just the one. Right, now, let's the QB prop. What are you seeing right now?
I mean, I still like 3 quarterbacks in the first round. I think it's 2.5 right now. Oh, but if it's set at 3.5, I still like it. I mean, we're going to get Malik Willis in the first round.
I think Pickett could drop out of the first round. He
could drop out, but here's the reason why Pickett, it would be a bold call for him to drop out of the first round, is because, okay, we know Carolina needs a quarterback at 6, right? So if they don't take him, then the next level is New Orleans needs a quarterback, right? They're in the teens. Pittsburgh needs a quarterback. They're at 20. Now, Pittsburgh, Kenny Pickett played at the University of Pittsburgh, right? It's the same stadium, I believe. I mean, so there's another possibility.
There's a lot of teams that need. We could do a whole show about teams that need quarterbacks. Yeah, and then also Pickett could. There's also the teams that are going to trade back up into the first round if Pickett slips, because you get that 5th-year option. Tennessee is a sneaky team to take a quarterback to back up Ryan Tannehill. He fell off a little bit last year. I mean, they may not want to roll with him going into 2023. So that could be a team that grabs a quarterback. I've got one for you. This is a Seslowsky special. I'm throwing this right at you. QB position. I don't want to dive too deep in the QB position here, but after Malik Willis, there's a lot of names here. There's a lot of names that could go. Who do you think is the second guy off the board?
Right now, it's looking like Matt Corral or Desmond Ritter, but I would say Corral is he was the consensus one at one point. It fell off, came back on. Now there's momentum. I mean, he's attending the green room on Thursday, so maybe he's got
Matt Corral.
Yeah, at Ole Miss.
What's give me a breakdown. What's the profile of Matt Corral? What is he a runner? Are there any other running quarterbacks, fantasy gold quarterbacks beyond potentially with Malik?
Yeah, Desmond Ritter, man. He's a running quarterback from Cincinnati. He profiles more like a Marcus Mariota type. Mounted up to like 50+ wins in college. Came out at the Senior Bowl, looked all right. Desmond Ritter is a player that I've seen mocked to New Orleans in the teens. Could be this year's Daniel Jones in the sense where he surprises some by his high draft capital. He could end up being the second quarterback off the board. We might see a team jump up. No one expected Daniel Jones to be the second quarterback that year. Everyone was thinking it was going to be Dwayne Haskins, and then it just took Gettleman to reach up and pick 6 and take him. So Ritter, even though he is a running quarterback, is more of a straight line runner, not a side-to-side agility. And that can, once he breaks through the first level, could take it to the house. So I like it. Even Matt Corral ran a lot of like RPO stuff. Kenny Pickett's mobile too. I mean, Kenny Pickett, that famous highlight where he fakes the dive and goes down, and then they actually changed the rule because of him when he did the fake slide and then kept running. So all of these guys have some mobility. Malik Willis being the highest one has got, he has that Michael Vick type of mobility. So.
Yeah, I'm interested in Will. I know that people are not talking about him as this incredible in real life quarterback, but I see maybe a potential better version of Jalen Hurts, which is fantasy gold, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would say the upside for Malik Willis is probably Mike Vick, and I would say the downside is probably, and this is not even bad, this is meant as a safe downside, is probably Tyrod Taylor, who when he was starting was a good fantasy quarterback. You were happy. You got rushing yardage and competent passing out of him.
Quality QB production. All right, we're gonna wrap it up there. Follow, guys. Give this guy a follow on Twitter. Please. He's spitting knowledge nuggets on the regular, and I love your TikTok page as well, at Alan Seslowsky. It's on the screen. Give him a follow. He is the man to know, to ask questions of. Super helpful. And of course, the Bold Call Fantasy Football Podcast. We're breaking down everything from Dynasty to Super Flex, best ball. And playing best ball all off season. So stick around, subscribe to the channel, notification button, all that stuff. And we will see you next time on another Bold Call. Take care, everybody. Good luck.